right, I'd like to call to order the Park Board meeting for the City of Edina for Monday, November 10th, 2014. And the first item is the roll call. So, Janet, would you please?
Member Jones? Here. Member Deeds?
Here.
Member McCormick? Here. Member Steele? Here. Member Chowdhury?
Here.
Member Giesecke?
Here.
Member Caldwell?
Here.
Member Jacobson?
Here.
All right, thank you. Next is the approval of the meeting agenda, and we have one slight change that we'd like to implement, but we need to vote on that, and that is down in the reports and recommendations section. We want to move up item C, where Bill is going to be presenting for us, and we're going to move that to the switch that with make it number 1. So I'll switch it with A and put it up there. He's on our tight timeline, so if I could get a motion for that from someone. No motion to make it the change to the agenda.
I motion to change the agenda.
Second. All right, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes, so we have a change to the meeting agenda. That's a change. Now let's vote on the actual meeting agenda. All right. All right, if I can have a motion for that.
Move approval.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. It passes. Next is the adoption of the consent agenda and the approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion for that?
Move approval.
All right. Second? Okay, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? All right, the consent agenda passes. Next section is community comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak? All right, seeing no one, we can move along to the reports and recommendations section. And as we noted, we will be having Bill present here and covering redevelopment planning for former public works site and an update.
Great, thank you and good evening. My name is Bill Neuendorf. I'm the city's economic development manager. And I just wanted to give you a brief update and also extend an invitation to some upcoming public meetings about the vacant public works site over in Grandview. This site has been discussed for many years, but recently the City Council has made some actions to see if we can move this project forward. At our last council meeting, they chose to enter into a partnership with a Franchute company to implement a collaborative development planning process. When I say that, some people hear the word planning and others hear the word process. But ultimately what we're looking for is to kick off about a 7-month period of engagement to really study and refine some options for that site. Now this is the vacant piece of land where we used to have our public works facility. It's located just north of OLG and just behind Jerry's Foods. It's about 3.5 acres. So starting in December, in fact, you can mark your calendars, on Thursday, December 4th, we're going to be having our first exploratory session. What we're looking for there is that this will be a large group meeting held in the Edina Community Center to really look back at what we've talked about and where we left off with some of our last committees, but also look at what we've learned so far. We've done a couple resident surveys since that time, some needs assessments. There's still ongoing work to that's still in process, as you all are aware of. But starting on December 4th, we want to renew the conversation. It's been on hold for about a year now, so we want to get started again. And ultimately, where we want to end up is to have some good options in front of us that we can then select the best option. So this process starts off in December. We're aiming at mid-May of 2015. And that's where we'd have 2, 3, maybe even 4 good options that we can then decide, we can select from. So far there's been lots of conversation, a lot of comments about what do we need, what do we want. By my experience, if I ask 10 different people, I get 10 different answers. But over the next few months as a community, we really have to have a robust and sincere conversation about what we really need, what really fits on the property, and then the big question is how are we going to fund and pay for what we're looking for. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on where we are with that site. December 4th is the next date. Over the next couple of weeks, look for ads, postcards, announcements, flyers, those types of things. But I wanted to approach the board first with this information. I'm happy to answer any questions as well, but that's what I have for you this evening.
Excuse me. What would be the park board involvement in this process?
That's an excellent question. At this point, I've approached this is my fifth board and commission. Each group, it's really up to you, I guess, is my answer to that. With this facility, right now the city council has directed that a portion of the site would be for public use and a portion of the site would be for private use. That's the only direction we have so far. My assumption is that the public portion most likely is going to be some types of parks and recreation type facility. So right now there's a master plan that's starting to kick off. There's lots of different opportunities out there. I wanted to alert you to the schedule because in the months of December, January, February, those would be the key time period for this group to really plug in. So my first offer is to invite you to these big sessions, but also I want to extend an offer, an invitation, if it makes more sense to come back and meet with this site being on your agenda at a future meeting. We're happy to work that way. If you suggest or if you think that it might work better to have focused conversations with the design team, we could do that as well. There's no right way or wrong way, but over the next several months, we really want to focus in on that. So I just wanted to present the kind of the kickoff date for this. If you have time tonight or at a future meeting, happy to come back, happy to schedule special meetings, however you want to plug in. But the input of this board and commission and every other group is vital to get this project to be successfully completed.
I guess I just have one question. How would you foresee that the LID project, the building on top of the freeway project, is that going to be part of the Grandview project, or are they separate projects, or how would that evolve?
Great question. So they would be separate projects. The LID was a proposal to be really innovative with how we integrate transportation and land use. By my estimate, if all the parties said yes to the LID, and so far no one has said yes, but if no one said no either, we just haven't asked the question. But the LID, at its earliest, is 10 years away. So right now in the planning phase, we want to look towards that because maybe it's possible. But they're two separate projects. They're in the same general area, so we'll keep them on separate tracks, but obviously staff will talk to each other, different groups will talk with each other.
I'm sure you've looked at the needs assessment that Ron Vine did for the park board, the ETC survey. I'm wondering if we can pull the data that would be relevant to that project and kind of pull it out separately and then also cross-tabulate it as far as ages and location of residence. That would help me, at least as a park board member, and I'm sure other members of the public, to really see what, from a park and recreation standpoint, what residents are looking for. I know we're going to look at it comprehensively, but it does talk about the arts and culture aspects, and so I think to pull them out would help us to get more detailed analysis on those items.
Thanks for that suggestion. We can definitely look into it. That is an important study. I know there's at least a couple questions that are directly relevant to this site. So I'm not sure about the statistical significance if we cross-tabulate too far, but we should definitely ask. But we've included that study with as one of the pieces of vital information that we've shared with our partners so far.
And I could be wrong, but my understanding is we receive so many results that, at certain points, the cross-tabulations are not going to be valuable. But for the large majority, we got such a good response rate that data should be very valid.
So one of the things, speaking of that needs assessment survey, One of the specific questions that had to do with Grandview showed that 73% of Edina residents support a new indoor community space on that site of the former Public Works. And I just, as we're talking about this, I heard that you said that City Council has talked about leaving space for the public on that site. And, you know, this process has been going on so long, and I have been attending these meetings. I attended something like 2 years worth of Grandview meetings, where it was there was public engagement, and I think that they worked really hard at creating a good framework, and I think that they worked really hard at that public engagement. But I think that the council and you should understand that the people who worked on that, as well as the people who filled out these surveys, really want the city to honor their time and their work, so that when the city asks a question such as, what would you like, what would you support this on the Public Works site, and then they get a contractor who doesn't show any options and or that there is no significant public amenity on any of those options that come back to us as a park board, then we would feel that they are not being responsive to the citizens who have taken the time to do those surveys. So, and there have been many surveys. There was a survey just in January of 2014 that the Phase 3 CAT undertook, and it showed that 3 of the most opposed uses for the former Public Works site were apartments. 64% of Edina residents said that they were opposed to apartments and townhomes. 54% were opposed to office space. And so it just seems as if every time this process begins again, it's as if what happened in the past didn't happen, because for whatever reason the public didn't come up with the preordained idea for this site. And actually I think the public has spoken that they would like a public amenity. The framework talks about public amenities. Those public amenities are not like the room open to the public at Devani's either. I know that now, as I was seeing the developers, the word public space was very squishy, but it was not squishy during the conversations for the Grandview Steering Committee. Public space was considered like City Hall, city-owned. So that would be my expectation, and I think that that's the expectation of the people who had participated.
I just want to kind of second what was just said. We're a fully built-out city. There is very little public space left. There is very little developable space left. And so as you begin to undertake this, the long-term benefit from investment in amenities to the broader real estate prices and everything else in this city are going to probably benefit more from building the amenities up than from another restaurant, another set of apartments, or another set of condominiums. We have very little in the way of park space left or public space left to make use of. And I think if we really think this through and we consider how we compete with other burbs in the area and what we compete on, and if we do not remain a destination suburb for people moving into the Twin Cities, we can't keep our property values up. And so I think it has to be taken very seriously and thought about, because the long-term benefit to the city, in my estimation, and I'm also trained in economics and sorted other things, and I would bet you that in the long-term benefit to the city, a good public space probably has higher returns than another shopping center. So even given the tax revenues that you're likely to generate on it. So it has to be taken very seriously.
What have been the discussions with the school district so far?
So far, I've met with their parent leadership council and gave them the same invitation that I just gave you. I'm not sure, and I talked with the school district on several different projects.
About their bus garage, about programming, collaboration. Where do they fit into this puzzle? Because for Park and Recreation to maximize programming, especially in a community center type of public space, we're going to need to talk with them more. But there's obviously bigger issues like the bus garage, and so I'm wondering, when do they, at what capacity do. Oops.
Thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate that. So I think there's two questions there, or two parts to my answer at least. Regarding shared use or collaborative planning and those types of efforts, I think there's a good relationship generally with the city and the school district about working together. I think we've done that in the past. I think there's probably other areas that we could improve on. But as we begin this process about this particular site, this 3.5-acre site, I'm making the same invitation to this group, the school groups, and everybody else to come together and decide how can we work best? What is the real need on this site? What are we really willing to pay for on this site? And how can we maximize the efficiency and do it most effectively? So right now, I don't have a canned answer of what that looks like when we're finished. But I think over the next 6 or 7 months as we go through this process, I think there'll be many opportunities to sit down and think with our colleagues with other boards and commissions that have other areas of expertise, what are we working on together, and how can we achieve that success that makes Edina and keeps Edina that go-to place for new residents, as well as a place they want to stay at for existing residents because it's home and there's some great things here. So I think there are opportunities for collaboration there. Regarding the bus garage site, that's a little bit different topic there. In the past, the city was thinking that maybe we could look at a redevelopment option for the city's property plus the school district's property. But as we've explored that option, we've discovered that it's really not an option. The city is on one time frame. The school district is on a different time frame for their bus facility. That was one of the reasons that the city council made a decision to move forward with our piece of property to see if we can get something great for our site, being cognizant that at some point in time, the bus facility just isn't going to work for the school districts. One of the things I've learned as I've been chatting with the school district staff is that the new school buses are taller than the old school buses, so they don't even fit in the old garage because the ceiling and the doors aren't high enough. So eventually that facility, the bus facility, will have to be replaced, but they're not there yet.
What kind of time frame are they looking at?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them that question. I know they are looking towards a referendum next year to look into facility investments, and the bus facility is on their list of things to possibly fund. I think the earliest funding would be in 2017 or 2018 is my understanding. But that was broadly speaking, and there's many different projects in there, so I don't have any details of when that might be included, if it is specifically included. So there are lots of conversations, but as I mentioned, I think that the key answer is the city and the school district right now are on different time frames. So I would imagine that in the next half generation, both properties will look differently, but they'll probably occur one after the other.
now I'm a little confused. I thought that I saw a request by you for $3 million to buy that site in the most recent capital improvement plan.
So there is a draft capital improvement plan that the City Council will look at next week. I did put a placeholder in that plan, but it's not to buy the existing site.
But that's how it was labeled.
I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was labeled something to the effect of replacement facility for a school district or something to that nature. So what we've talked about in the past is the school district has a different set of funding criteria than the city has. For capital improvements projects, it's typically easier for a municipality to find funding than it is for school districts. In the past, we had talked to the school district about the city working cooperatively like we did on the city gym to build that facility over by the Southview and by the Edina Community Center, where the city funded part of it and the school district funded part of it. So that was my request in the CIP. But it's not site specific. We don't have a site in mind today. If we did, I think we may have already had a result. So.
Has the City Council taken any other action with respect to the public works site besides passing the framework?
Depends how detailed you want to get, but lots of different actions. In 2012, the development framework was approved. That showed the outcome of about 2 years of public conversation, and many folks were involved in that effort. After that, the city raised the site, cleared the vacant buildings, so hired a contractor, hired an environmental consultant. There was a lot of materials in the soil, oil tanks, fuel oil tanks, hydraulic fluids, typical stuff for an older site. So that was cleaned up. That was all under the City Council direction. And then most recently I mentioned the agreement with the Franchu company to collaboratively plan the next phase for that site. So there's been many steps along the way so far, and all that is really background. I mean, the end result is to have something great on that site, but it takes years of planning and process to get there, and we hope to take that background work and springboard into a good project in 2015.
So the last thing that they approved was a framework that included 50,000 square feet for a community building for public space, and approximately 400 parking spaces. And they have not decided to not go forward on that. Is that right? Or that's a double negative. Sorry, that was a confusing one.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Sometimes I'm just saying they haven't decided anything differently.
You are 100% correct. Let me use an anecdote to reinforce that. So literally, I can meet with one group on Monday and they say, "Oh, it should definitely be X," and then I'll meet with the other group the next day. "Oh, do anything except X." There's been lots of ideas, lots of suggestions. If you ask basketball parents, we need more basketball courts. If you ask swimming parents, we need more swimming pools. If you ask arts folks, we need more arts facilities. At this point, nothing is on the table and nothing is off the table. The only fundamental is that a portion of the property will remain public and a portion of it will become private. Is it 50-50? Is it 75-25? That's all to be explored, and that's part of the next 7 months of planning to find out what fits and what really achieves our goal, and how much of a building can we afford, and how much do we want to provide. So there's 1,000 questions, and I wish I had more answers. When we come back in April, May, and June of next year, I think we will have more options on the table, and then hopefully come June we'll be able to make a selection. So nothing's on the table or off the table other than the development framework in 2012 that used a rendering to describe it, but you're exactly right in your recollection. It showed a mixed-use building that had about half the site as a public building, that had a real building, plus a parking ramp, plus a rooftop green space. And then next to it, in the rendering, they showed apartments. That was what was envisioned back then. Nothing magical about the form or the shape or the size, but that was the placeholder that was used. And that was formed after the 2-year process through the first and second advisory teams. So that was the kind of the vision as we sought development partners. That's what we used as an example. In the next several months, maybe there'll be an example that looks similar to that. Maybe it looks the exact opposite. But over the next few months, we've directed our partner to help us shape multiple options to maximize the use of the site for the community. Not for the developer, but for the community. So that's our charge. I look forward to working with you guys more over the next several months. And again, if you haven't already, December 4th is our next session, large group session. So if you could put that in your calendar. And also, as I started, happy to answer questions in the future. But I'd really love for this to become a dialogue. So whether we come back to the park board in whenever, January, February, March, let us know what works, or whether we do a special task force to focus on parks and recs or collaborative land uses, we're happy to plug in because we've got some big decisions to make, decisions that will be made in 2015, but the outcome will be enjoyed by the next 3 generations of Edina's folks. So they're big decisions.
All right, and I think that's it. Bill, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Yep. All right. In our amended agenda, we now shift to the golf course projects update. And I think Joe Aboud is going to present to us.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joe Aboud. I'm the new general manager at Braemar Golf Course. Just to give you a little background information about myself, been in the golf business all my life. My father was a life member of the PGA. I grew up at the country club shagging balls for him. Most recently, I've been with Kemper Sports for, not recent, but 16 years. I was at 6 different properties for Kemper Sports. During that time, I won the General Manager of the Year for all of Kemper Sports. There's about 70 properties all over the U.S., and I was lucky enough to win that award. Most recently, I've been in New Jersey working on a project that has some similar qualities to this one. It was a revitalization project where Union County, New Jersey, decided to reinvest in one of their assets, and they had 3 golf courses there, and one of the other similarities was the fact that we had to make the tough decision to close one of the golf courses there. So it has a lot of similarities to what is going on here in Edina. Just to give you an update on what's going on with the Fred Richards, we did close the golf course for good as of October 5th. The decision was made to close it at that time based on the financials and historicals for what it had been doing in October. And, by closing it in October, we probably saved anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000. So it was probably a very good decision to close it at that time and save a little money going into the wintertime. During the last month of play, what we did is we handed out coupons to all the people who played the golf course just to get them starting to come over to Braemar. And we had some very good success with that. We've already started seeing some of those coupons coming back before the snow event today. So that's been good. During the last weekend of play, we also did a free junior golf play over the weekend. So kids got to play the golf course for the last time over that weekend for free. Over the last few months, we've been very busy, the staff at Braemar contacting all the leagues that are presently playing over at Fred Richards, and we've had some very good success in moving them over to Braemar for 2015. They include the Pattyburg Junior Girls League. They're going to be coming over. They're Sunday afternoon. It's a very good program. have about, I think, between 70 and 100 girls in that program. So it's good to have it coming over to Braemar. The Edina Senior League will be coming over for at least the first half of the year. Prior to construction, they're going to be coming over to the executive course. We also had the CA Corporate League and the Happy Hackers. They're all going to be coming over. And there's a couple more leagues that are still on the fence, but we're still working with them just to get them transitioned over to Braemar for 2015. What we are doing to help accommodate the Fred Richards customers going into the construction year next year with the executive course, we've actually gone ahead and created a short course on the Clooney 9 to where we're going to be able to accommodate all those golfers on a shorter course on the Clooney 9. So, you know what, we are downsizing a little bit, but I think we'll be able to accommodate all the golfers that we had planned for all the facilities that we had over on the Braemar site. Just to help along with some of the transition, the Clooney is going to be a little bit longer walk for some of these people, so we are going to do some cart specials going into 2015 just to help the people in the extended tee to green walks that they're going to have, or green to tee walks. Moving on to the driving range expansion update, we are scheduled to break ground July 7th of next year. Kevin Norby, golf course architect, he's going to be leading this project. He is in the design phase right now, and we should be ready to go out to bid just after the new year. So that's going to be going out there. We should be able to get a pretty favorable bid process when we're looking at it this early in the year as opposed to when we were looking at it last year. I think it's going to work out financially for us just to wait a little bit, and that's going to work to our benefit with a little bit better bid prospects coming in. And then last thing I wanted to update you on was the master plan task force that we have going on. They started meeting in June of 2014, and we had 5 really good not really good golfers, but really good people from Edina as part of the task force. They're golf enthusiasts. They are very passionate about what's going on at Braemar, so it's very good to have them on the task force. 2 members of the park board are also on that task force, as well as the mayor. We've been meeting regularly up until a couple weeks ago, where we had Richard Mandel out here for the second time. Richard Mandel is the golf course architect that we hired for the master plan process. He was selected unanimously by the task force through a very vigorous selection process, where we sent out an RFP and we received 28 different responses from different architects from all over the country. And we narrowed it down to 5. And through the interview process, we pulled Richard Mandel out, and like I said, he was unanimously elected to lead this project going into the future. He's been very busy. He's been out here twice. He's actually lives in Pinehurst, North Carolina, and he's been out here a couple times. He's done some site visits to where we've had about 75 of the constituents come around and walk the golf course with us and get feedback. And he's very good at communicating with the public. He's very good about, gathering information. And I think he's going to put together an extremely good report for us. So that's been going very well up to date, and we're pretty pleased with it. The master plan should be completed by the spring of 2015. And we should have our roadmap for the next few years going forward. He's also actually doing a tree management report for us as well, which is very valuable to the city and to the golf course project. And that should be done in the summer of 2015. So that was the quick update. Is there any questions that you have for me about any of the things I just spoke about?
What's the target for completion of the driving range and the redesigned executive course?
The completion should be in the summer. We should be opened up fully in 2016. So we're looking at 1 season all the way through. We're going to try and get the driving range open as soon as possible. Part of the process is reseeding an area. We won't be able to let people fully play on that area until later in the summer, but we should be able to open up the driving range earlier in the spring.
Oh, Joe,
Sure. Yes.
Questions. One, with the leagues that aren't committed to going to Braemar, where would they go? What's their other options?
Me being the new person, I really couldn't answer that. There's not a lot of places that I understand there is to go. Some of the local courses, Meadowbrook has closed down. There's another course that only has 9 holes open, so they are very limited in where they can go to. I know that. But you know what? There are several options in the area. I just couldn't tell you offhand. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. And then I didn't. There's a note that says the Fred Richards bent grass green sod will be utilized within the park system.
Yes, we've actually put that up for anybody to use. Actually, Tom has been able to utilize that for sodding some of his areas at the Centennial to move that and save a little bit of money on that part.
Great, thanks.
And I'm wondering what the scope is of the task force. You're not handling any of the trails that are in the bird sanctuary near the golf course, are you?
Not really, but everything that is in the scope of this project is for the betterment of the park as a whole. So we are looking at anything that would make it even a better amenity to the community. So there could be new trails going in there. There could be a new putting course that might go in there, or a different walking park. So there's a few different options out there. We've tasked Richard Mandel with looking at everything because we want to make it a more community park. We've talked about calling it the Braemar Golf Village just to bring more people in. So there's a lot of things that are on the table. Nothing's set yet, but it's out there to where we want to improve the facility.
I would highly encourage that one of the results of our needs assessment survey was that most people in Edina do want more paths and walking paths and even nature paths. And the area, I have been in that bird sanctuary back on the edges of the course, and to be able to somehow create that, to truly develop that so that the rest of the community can use that, and the trails are not eroding, and there's some issues back there too that we could focus on in the plan, as well as to bring people into the clubhouse for those types of things. I think most people in Edina don't even realize that that's a bird sanctuary. So.
Absolutely. That is the goal of the task force. I mean, we want to bring people to the facility, not just golfers. We want to make it a place that, the community can feel proud of and come visit it and have an ice cream out on one of our patios or different things like that, or ride their bike up there. So we're definitely looking at it on a broader perspective.
It wasn't on your list, but are we have any movement in terms of vendors for the restaurant?
There's some movement. Nothing is finalized. We're still in the contracting phase, but it does look promising. We're close.
I'll jump in on that one as well. We hope to have a lease agreement for City Council approval next Tuesday.
And this is the...
It is, yes.
Can I get you to speak a little bit? Some of the concerns for myself, and I think some of the City Council and several members here, when we were talking about the process and closing down the Fred, was how do we do right for all the user groups, and particularly youths, seniors, beginners. You talked about some of the leagues and the groups. What are we envisioning to make sure we accommodate all those folks at Braemar going forward that used to use the Fred?
Well, like I said, we're trying to engage all the people that were playing the golf course. We're trying to let people know that there is availability at Braemar. I think it might be a little bit of a misconception about the junior program. The junior program at Braemar is unbelievable. from a outsider person coming in and looking at it, I heard I watched some of the videos and heard that, Braemar wasn't as friendly to junior golfers. That's not the case. Braemar has an outstanding junior program. I think there was between 600 and 700 kids in that program. It's phenomenal, and I think they're going to be accommodated very well. The executive course will be open through July, and then July 6th, and then after that, we're going to do our best to accommodate them on the Clooney 9. And the amount of rounds that took place in previous years, we'll definitely be able to accommodate that on the Braemar site. So I'm not too much worried about that. But we're going to go after all the juniors. We're going to go after all the seniors that played the Fred Richards, and we're going to bring them over to Braemar.
I would recommend updating and maybe boosting the website on the Braemar project and also the Fred Richard project. Right now it has meetings from September on it, so putting dates about when you expect the master plan to be completed and the report to be completed, I think would be really helpful for residents to know. But also kind of being proactive and maybe saying here's a link to junior golf programs or something, just to really show that we're out there and encouraging people to come to Braemar. And so on a side note, the Fred Richards site could also be updated. I think it says that look for weekly updates, and it hasn't been updated in a couple months. So, and then the Fred Richards site has a separate link on the left-hand sidebar, but it would be nice if at the bottom it also linked to the Braemar project, because I believe they're very complementary. So.
Absolutely. We'll definitely get that updated.
Just to follow on with it, and I haven't paid attention to the site, but do we have information up about Richard Mandel at this point and some of the courses he's designed and some of the work he's done in order to begin generating some excitement about what's going to be going on at Braemar? Given that we've selected him at this point, I think it makes sense to get some publicity going, pull up some of the courses and some of the work he's done.
Absolutely. We don't at this time, but we will get that up there on the site. Just for everybody else's reference, Richard Mandel just recently did the work at Keller and has gotten rave reviews. So we've held back putting a little bit up there just because we don't honestly have anything to show just yet, because he's still in the kind of the preliminary design stage, but we will get a little bit more up on the website just to get a little more information out there.
And share it on Facebook and tweet it through the communications department would be great.
Okay.
And just to let you know, I've been hearing really good reviews from the golfer. I don't golf, so I couldn't tell a well-run golf course from anything. But so welcome. I think this is one of the first times you've been here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Thank you. I'm very excited about being here. There's a lot of good things going on. Braemar has the potential to do extremely well in the future, and I think we're well on the right path to doing that.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have CIP next, right, Dan?
Yes, I didn't feel the need to introduce you, but yes, Ann will be talking to us on the capital improvement plan for 2015.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan. I have just a brief presentation to tell you a little bit about the CIP process and how we got to where we are to date. And then I have some of my facility managers here this evening. I have Joe Bood that you just met, Susie Miller from Braemar, Tom Shirley from Centennial Lakes, and Dawn Bytel from Edinburgh Park. So we can certainly answer any questions about the specifics of the CIP at the completion. So just to give you a little bit of a background, the CIP focus is every other year. In even years, we're focusing on the CIP, and in odd years, we're focusing on the operating budget. And this is a budget timeline of everything that we've completed to date and the expected approvals for the CIP. So as you can see, we go back to early April when we started talking with the City Council on some of their themes and some of the things that they would like to see in the CIP this year. We started a public engagement session in May. The ELT is the executive leadership team made up of the department heads in the city. And we had our first discussion about the CIP on May 28th. And then in the summer months is when our staff really went to work, working hard to put together the CIP forms that were then turned into department heads for review. Department heads were then asked to rank the CIP projects for their departments, and then turned into the city finance team, who reviewed all of the projects that were submitted. Then they put them together and prioritized them, gave them a ranking, and then put together a draft CIP for review and release to the public. So that's where we are right now. We are in the public engagement environment again. We have Speak Up Edina on the internet, and we're asking for input on that. We would certainly like some input from the park board tonight, and the next steps are city council approval in December. So this is a little bit about what I just described in terms of how it goes through the process, starting with our division leaders, in this case, many of my facility managers. Then I get it, do the ranking, and goes through to finally having the city manager put together the CIP for recommendation to the council. Two things that were added this year as we looked at all of our CIP projects. One was we wanted to try to get more resident feedback. 2 years ago was the first time that we really actively sought feedback from the residents, so we wanted to try to reach out a little bit more to residents, get feedback this year. And we also were asked to give an environmental impact rating on all of the projects that were submitted. So that was something that was considered for every project that we put forth. So just a few facts about the CIP. In the Parks and Recreation Department, I received over 100 requests for CIP projects from my facility managers and for the Parks and Recreation Department. And Susan and I narrowed those requests down to 71 to submit to the finance team for consideration. So as you can see, that's a pretty large number when the finance department received 226 projects overall. And in 2007, in 2013, there were 207 requests placed. And the total request for the 5-year CIP budget totaled $157 million versus $108 million in the 2013 CIP. And the CIP funding is really important for the city just to really maintain the facilities that we have. This diagram shows that of the projects that were put forth, 63% of them are to repair or replace infrastructure that we currently have. And that's about $100 million worth of repair and replacement. So as far as the public engagement process, as I mentioned in May, the CIP was put on Speak Up Edina, and we've received some good feedback from that. We asked 3 questions that were the same 3 questions as we asked in the last CIP process. And those questions are, what sort of capital improvements would you like the city to make in the future? What are your thoughts on the last CIP, and did we miss anything that we should consider this time around? And with limited funds, what are the most important to you that should take priority? And are we doing too much of one thing and not enough of another? So those are the Speak Up Edina questions that were asked. And still, the CIP is on Speak Up Edina. There are paper copies of the survey questions available at City Hall. And the next step is for the City Council to hold a public hearing on December 2nd. So with that, my staff and I stand to answer any questions that you might have. We put our recommended CIP in the packet, so hopefully you've had an opportunity to review some of those projects, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just for clarification, the priority listings, on the 2-pager that you gave us, are those your recommended priorities? The department's recommended priorities, or is that from the council?
I'm sorry, Susan? Those are from the committees. So we ranked ours. I'm sorry, we've got so many sheets. I'm not sure which one you're looking at.
No,
we did rank our list of priorities from 1 to 71, and then we gave them rankings in there as well. But the priorities that you see are the priorities from the committee.
The ELT? That's what I'm trying to understand.
No, it's a finance committee that's composed of our finance director, assistant finance director, assistant city manager, and then another department head. In this year's case, it was the fire.
So they're
chief.
considering. Oh, that's what I'm asking. So these priorities are what's going to go to the city council, and this is the recommendation of staff, as it were, or essentially our city manager.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying to understand. What were your top priorities?
It was a difficult process for us this year as we're engaging in the strategic planning process of the park system. We look at a park system with some aging infrastructure, and from a park system, we look at aging park shelter buildings that are in desperate need of replacement. We look at playgrounds that are in desperate need of replacement. We have over a dozen playgrounds that are almost 20 years old. And so I am very anxious to get through the strategic planning process so that we can really prioritize and try to put budgets and years to some of these projects. Those are the projects from our Park and Recreation Department that really jump out at me. We had some other infrastructure things like irrigation and fencing on some ball fields where we had some safety issues that were very important to us. And then, it's difficult for us to kind of prioritize some of those projects against our enterprise facilities. All of our enterprise facilities have projects that are incredibly important to their operations. We have a very high focus this year on the Braemar Gulf operations. And so you will see many projects in there that are prioritized very high. We want to make significant change there, and we want to make change as quickly as possible. So I think it's pretty evident that we have a very high priority on Braemar this year. But we certainly look at infrastructure that's aging. We look at infrastructure that's unsafe, and those certainly go to the top of the list. Where it was really difficult for us this year is we look at 6 park shelter buildings that need to be replaced. All of the individual neighborhoods feel like their shelter buildings should be a priority. So I'm really interested in getting through the strategic planning process, get a lot of feedback from the park board on what should happen with all of those shelter buildings and in what order of priority they should be replaced.
So, Anne, just on the golf course piece, I was just looking at the priorities, and I see the course renovation is a 5, so that's a lower priority, correct? A 5?
You
Even
know,
though we're
that's where
spending-
that's where it gets a little bit confusing. The fact that it's rated a 5 really, in this case, just means that we're not recommending that it happen in the next 2 years. So anything that is ranked like a 1 through 4 is likely to be funded in the first 2 years of the CIP. And we're not going to be ready to do any renovations at Braemar for 2 years. So that's why that was prioritized a 5, just because we're not going to be ready for it in 2 years, because we're going to be doing the driving range and executive course project.
16. It's down for 16, 2016.
Is it down for 16? Well, and part of the reason for that, too, is lack of a funding source. So if we get through this master planning process and can figure out a timing and figure out a funding mechanism, and it's going to need park board approval, it's going to need city council approval. If we can get a funding mechanism and a timing, that is something that we hope to remain flexible. But in terms of priorities, really for our department, it's one of the top priorities.
Okay. And so if something moves from year to year, that's not a big deal within the capital approval plan, as long as it's within that 5-year horizon?
The way the CIP works is it's a 5-year plan, but only 2 years of the CIP are approved. And any project that's over $20,000 requires city council approval. So we try to be as accurate as we can on the years, but sometimes the years do change, and that is a conversation that takes place with our finance department, our city manager, and then typically the park board and the city council. So in the case of the golf course renovation project, if we get through the master planning process and we get through the renovations next year and can identify a funding source, then that would be time to have that conversation as to where it should fall in the CIP. That one is a slightly different one because it's such a high dollar amount, and it is not likely to be funded in the CIP. There's probably going to be bonding dollars that are going to have to take place there.
Hi, Ann. One question. How would you foresee the funding for the Fred Richards conversion happening? It's not part of this financing. It's something separate.
That's correct. It would not likely come out of the CIP, and that's a conversation that honestly we haven't had to any great extent yet, but certainly will be a conversation that will take place as we go through the master planning process starting next summer.
And that question would apply also, would that answer apply also to Grandview? Anything done at Grandview? I don't see anything here for that.
Yes, that is correct. That would not be in the CIP.
And the dome project is not in the CIP as far as I see. So that is another separate budget issue, or we already paid for it?
That was a separate
Thought
bond
that might
issue.
be the answer.
Yes, that did not come out of the CIP either.
How are we doing on that? Off topic.
We're doing great, and I'll give you an update on that at the end of the meeting. It's doing great.
Okay, I have a question on the park shelter buildings, because I agree what did you quote in here? Something like they look like bomb shelters. They really do need help. But if, and here I'm just curious, if we agree to, it had something to do with the wording, if we agree to putting in siding and roofs, then does that mean that they will get off of the CIP for replacement for indeterminate number of years, or?
Ellen, that's a great question, and I'm really glad that you asked it, because that's one part of the CIP that is a little bit tricky and has proven to be a little bit misleading for some folks. So when we submitted our CIP projects, as far as the shelter building, I wanted to make sure that our park board and our city council understood really the financial liability that's outstanding with those shelter buildings. Based on the last 2 park shelter buildings that we've constructed, I think it's safe to say that, depending upon the site and the size of the shelter building, we could easily spend $600,000. I think Pamela is up to $650 now. And so I wanted to make sure that the Park Board and City Council understood the potential financial liability out there for these shelter buildings, knowing that we weren't likely to get funding in the CIP to replace these shelter buildings because there's just not enough funding in the CIP to be able to do that. So I put the shelter buildings in there because I wanted people to be aware of the liability, but also knowing that we've got roofs that are failing on these shelter buildings and we have siding that's rotting. And it was the determination by our facilities manager for the city that those roofs and shelter buildings should not be delayed longer, because we don't know when and how we will get funding to replace those. That's not to say that we won't, but we currently don't have a funding source to replace those shelter buildings. So we felt like it was in the city's best interest now to spend about $16,000 per shelter building to at least keep them safe and functioning for the next few years. And in having a conversation with a member from the City Council about this, he actually made a really good analogy, and he said it's kind of like doing a mill and an overlay on a street. You might have to replace that street in a few years, but you need to get the street functioning in that period of time. And that's kind of the way I see these shelter buildings, is we need to keep them safe. We don't want them to be leaking and causing further damage. So in short, no, I don't see that doing repairs, just general maintenance on these buildings, is going to preclude them from being replaced in the near future.
So that they won't, it's on the budget now, so it wouldn't necessarily just be taken off.
You know, honestly, Ellen, what I would like to see with those shelter buildings is I would like to wait to do any maintenance next summer until we finish the park strategic plan, and really see how the city, how the park board, and how the city council is feeling about these shelter buildings, and then maybe talk about a funding source and see if we see anything coming up in the future, and then we can prioritize the buildings and we can prioritize the maintenance that needs to be done on those buildings. So that's how I would recommend moving forward with the maintenance on those buildings. And from a maintenance standpoint, once we get through the winter, a couple more months of holding off on doing those repairs isn't going to matter.
Small item, low priority. I know it's out several years. It's priority 7, but I need to at least ask about it for our new snowmobile. What do we? And this maybe is a question for Susan. I'm not sure. What do we have a need for a snowmobile? What do we use it for now? Maybe there's some anticipated needs. I'm not sure.
Dan, it's actually a showmobile.
Oh, did I read that wrong? It is a showmobile.
It is
I
a
stand corrected.
showmobile.
Wow. So what is a showmobile?
You know, the showmobile is like a portable stage. And this is another really great conversation for the park board as we complete the strategic plan of the park system. We should really decide if we want the city to invest in a portable stage to be able to move around to different parks and do different types of events and performances, or would we be better to invest in amphitheaters in one or more park locations? So the showmobile is out there kind of as a placeholder. And you're not the first person to say that.
You caught me on that one. Thank you.
I guess for me, the meaningful discussion is about the funding sources, because at the city council, you know, they went over how the construction fund has very unstable funding. So it's very, I mean, this prioritization is great. And the 1 and 2 items definitely need to be taken care of. But, I don't have a lot of confidence in the future if we have unstable funding. And I just wanted to share, at the University of Minnesota, we have 35% of our buildings are over 50 years old, so we go to the state every year for capital requests. And we're actually this year going to the state and asking for budget money to fund our higher education asset and preservation replacement fund. So we're moving from this capital funding to a budget, a stable funding. And the idea is that you are saving money by having a stable source of funding. And, doing these short-term, I understand your reactive standpoint by doing these short-term fixes to the shelter buildings, but we're going to end up spending money. So I think the discussion definitely needs to be on our radar. And then the other item, I know it costs much less than the shelter buildings, but trails was a big item on the survey. So this goes out to 2019. I'm assuming we would have some repairs, and how will we fund those? Because I know that has been tough in the past with like Bredesen Park.
We actually have a budget for trails in our park maintenance budget. So we definitely feel like we have the ability to maintain our existing trails with our current budget.
Okay, that's interesting because I think like 5 years ago I think Bredesen was on the CIP, correct?
Yep, and I can't tell you, Kia, exactly when that budget was implemented, but I would be willing to bet it's been within 5 years.
Okay. So I think, really those kinds of discussions are very important, and our strategic plan obviously will help get that going, but
From a strategic planning standpoint, it would have been really great for our department if it would have been a year away and we would have had the opportunity to finish our strategic plan in June of next year and then be doing the CIP in July and August. But we'll catch up.
I have a question about playground equipment. And this is, I seem to always ask you about playground equipment whenever a CIP comes up, because I would think that we would need to be putting at least one, possibly two playground equipment, parks every year. And the ones that we have chosen to put on here for 2015, I don't think that if you asked me and I just looked at them, I'm not an inspector, but these parks have other amenities there that, some of these other parks that have old shelter buildings and have not been touched in years are waiting until 2019. It just does not seem equitable.
That'll be a great thing to address as part of the strategic plan. The one thing I can tell you for a Roslyn Park perspective, I know we have Roslyn in the CIP for next year. It's an old wooden structure, and it's probably one of the more, I don't want to say unsafe, it's not unsafe, but it provides more of an opportunity for liability than some of our other structures.
Yeah, I think we need to address the equitability of what Alan's talking about, not just with playgrounds, but in general with the strategic plan. So that's an important piece that we need to continue the discussion with.
Oh, one last thing. When we put in the irrigation, are we metering that?
That's a great question, and some of our facilities are metered and some of our facilities aren't metered, and I would be more than happy to put together a study to tell you which ones are and which ones aren't. I think it's very safe to say, though, that most of our general park facilities are not metered. More of our enterprise facilities are metered.
Right. And as we're putting in new, I would suggest that we meter.
Yes, as we're putting in new, like at the Pamela Shelter Building, there will be a meter, and at Countryside, we recently put in a meter there too.
Okay.
Anybody have anything for our enterprise managers?
I think that's it. Thank you, Ann. And maybe you can help me segue into the next. I think we have some folks scheduled to talk about the community needs assessment as well.
That is me, actually.
Yeah, that is you.
Dan.
Okay.
Yep. So thank you, Dan. I did put together a brief PowerPoint presentation to highlight some of the key points from the Community Needs Assessment Survey. And I put some links in your packet to the final report and then also the presentation that Ron Vine from the ETC Institute did last month. I'll go through my presentation here briefly. So the purpose of the survey was to assess resident usage and satisfaction with city parks, trails, and recreation facilities and services, to assess the needs, unmet needs, and priorities for parks, trails, and facilities, to gather input from residents to set priorities, and have statistically valid data to assist with the park system strategic plan. The survey was 8 pages long and took 12 to 14 minutes to complete. I did hear from some members of the community that it took considerably longer than that, and I really appreciate the time that everyone spent to complete the surveys. It was mailed to a sample of 3,000 households and could be completed by mail, web, or phone. Our goal was to complete 600 surveys, and we actually received 1,222 completed surveys. That gave us a confidence level of 95% with a margin of error plus or minus 2.7%. And for comparison's sake, in 2006, our goal was to complete 500 surveys. 865 were completed, and that gave us a confidence level of 95% with a margin of error plus or minus 3.4%. So we received just a tremendous response from our residents this year. The results were broken down by age of respondents, households with and without children, years living in Edina, location of residence, gender, and overall satisfaction with value received. And some of the key points that we took from the survey, and I'm picking out just a few because there's a lot. Our report is about 700 pages long. Probably the most striking thing for me is the amount of usage of our park system, and the 95% of household residents in Edina households in Edina visit parks, and 95% rate the conditions as excellent or good. The city is a primary provider of indoor and outdoor recreation services in the community. The residents are very satisfied with the overall value being high, but still there is an opportunity for higher rankings. 94% visited parks within the last year, and 91% visited in 2006. The average household visited 5.8 facilities or areas with playgrounds, ponds and lakes, grassy areas, shelter buildings, and athletic fields being in the top 5 most visited. And in terms of household utilization, most communities are in the mid-70s, and we're at 95, so that's really quite astounding. And 41% of households rate the physical condition of parks, trails, and facilities as excellent. That number was 45% in 2006. 54% rate the condition as good, and that was 53% in 2006. The national benchmark is 30%. 32% of households participated in recreation programs in the past 12 months, and that number was 36% in 2006. The national benchmark is 29%. The key reasons that residents participate in recreation programs are the location of the facility, they want to have fun, their friends are participating, they appreciate the quality of the programs, they want to improve their health and wellness, they want to learn a new skill, and we provide economical fees. And in terms of the quality of the programs, 39% rate the quality of our programs as excellent. It was 42% in 2006. 57% say good, and it was 55% in 2006. And the national benchmark is 33%. And the City of Edina, the Three Rivers Park District, and the school district are the three largest recreational service providers. This was another, I thought, very interesting fact, that the activities directory is how 60% of our participants find out about our programs. And I think that was a little surprising for everybody. If you recall, it was probably about 5 years ago that we eliminated our activities directory. We saw a dip in participation, and 2 years ago we brought that back. And what the ETC Institute said is that it's a good thing that we did bring that back, and that we should probably reevaluate our activities directory again in about 5 years, because you see some of the other numbers changing. People are finding out about our programs from friends and neighbors at an increased rate. They're finding out about our programs from newspaper articles at an increased rate, and our website. So we do see trends changing, but the activities directory is still very important in our community. And in terms of level of satisfaction with program value, 35% are very satisfied. The national benchmark is 24%. 45% are somewhat satisfied. And we really feel like somewhere in the 40 to 45% very satisfied range is achievable. Some of the facilities that residents have expressed a high need for, 85% for walking and biking trails, 69% for nature trails, 56% for natural areas and wildlife habitats, 42% for picnic areas, and 41% for indoor fitness and exercise facilities. And specifically about Fred Richards Park, we took the vision plan that we completed and we tested that as part of the survey to really find out if we were on track with what residents wanted at Fred Richards and if they were park amenities that people would use. And we were very, very pleased to see that the plan that had come out of our public engagement process this summer was really right on. 54% said that they wanted walking and hiking trails within the park, and another 53% wanted walking and hiking trails that connect with regional trails. 20% said state-of-the-art playgrounds for the entire community. 19% said small outdoor amphitheater for concerts. 18% theme-based adventure play areas, and 11% chose nothing. Some of the key points about Fred Richards is that 91% of respondent households throughout the city said that they would use Fred Richards Park if developed with facilities that they rated the highest. 15% said that they would use the facility several times a week, and 18% said they would use it once a week. And 86% of households within 1 mile of Fred Richards Park would use the park if developed with facilities most important to their household. 27% several times a week, and 14% once per week. And what these numbers really show in terms of our park system is that if we develop this park with the amenities that our residents are saying they want, it would be one of our heaviest, if not heaviest, used parks in the park system. And those numbers are really right up there with Centennial Lakes Park right now. In terms of indoor facilities that would be used most, 47% indicated a need for walking and jogging track, 27% exercise facilities for adults 50 plus, 20% weight room and cardiovascular equipment area. And would they support new indoor facilities? 51% of households are very supportive of an indoor community space with programs and facilities they would use the most at the public works site. And 22% are somewhat supportive. And what I would say about that is we were very much at the macro level, kind of flying at the 30,000 foot level. We didn't talk about this is how much it would cost to do that. We didn't put dollar amounts to it. We just talked about what types of facilities would you like to see, and if they were there, would you use them? Parks and Rec facilities that are most important to households by percentage of respondents who selected the item as one of their top 4 choices. Again, there's a pretty consistent message here. People want walking and biking trails, nature trails, natural areas and wildlife habitats, 18 and 9 hole golf courses, and 20% said playground equipment. And at the end of the presentation, Ron Vine was asked to give his top 5 takeaways from the survey. And above and beyond everything, he said your residents want more trails. And they want more trails, including connections to larger trail networks. And he said in terms of satisfaction, the number one way that we can improve satisfaction of our residents for the park system would be to give a much improved trail system with connectivity. And currently, we have a really good park system, but a lot of work needs to be done to raise us up to the level of a great park system. And he's done a lot of 700 of these types of community surveys, and he benchmarked us to several different park systems. And he kind of characterized us as a city that the wow has gone out of a lot of our facilities because we have some aging amenities. So if we can pay some attention to some of our more aging facilities, it'll increase the interest and get people more and more excited about the park system again. Certainly, the Fred Richards park concept is a tremendous opportunity, and again, if we design it as we're hearing from our residents about what they want there, it's going to be one of our most used parks in the park system. He also felt that the results regarding the public works site were very good. They were very strong, and that they definitely warranted more study about needs for an indoor facility. And he was also very impressed with the partnership that we have with our athletic associations. The responses were much higher than in the communities that he has done surveys before and has benchmarks for, and so he felt it was very important that we continue to foster the relationship with our athletic associations and continue to provide them the quantity and quality of facilities that they need. And that's all I have, and I would be happy to answer any questions, and I'm hoping that the park board might have a conversation about some of the survey results.
Did you get a sense, I know you're in the visioning meetings with a lot of us, and we compared Edina to similar, like communities around the country. When he's talking about national benchmarks and different things, he's not talking about similar type communities. He's talking about, communities in general, right? Municipalities in general. Do we have any idea how we compare to similar styled communities?
Yes, absolutely, Dan. In fact, in the report, he has some very specific benchmarks. He really likes to compare us to some of the suburbs around Chicago, on the north side of Chicago and on the west side of Chicago. And in a lot of cases, we are really close to those higher percentages, but we do have a little bit of work to do. Winnetka is one. I don't know, Dave, if you remember any of the others, but there were several around Chicago that he mentioned, and they were in a lot of the areas between 3 and 8, maybe even 10 points higher than we are. So we definitely have some improvement to do. One of the takeaways, though, that he gave me was that this study and the strategic plan that we're doing next year is absolutely going to give us the blueprint. If we listen to the study and we listen to the residents as part of the strategic planning process, we have the perfect opportunity to be able to really be one of those highest benchmark communities. That's where we hope to be.
So what's the next step for digging further into this data?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear Kia. What's the next step for?
Digging into the data as far as cross tabulations and,
we have a lot of the crosstabs available in the report, and so that report is available on that link. And I would assume that the next step would be to have a more detailed conversation with the strategic planning consultants about exactly how to use that crosstab data. Certainly open to any other recommendations. Honestly, I haven't had a lot of time to read through the other 500 pages of the report that contain a lot of the crosstabs, but as we get into the strategic planning process, I hope to get into it more.
I kind of have a question. More trails comes up, and I know that the city currently is looking into pedestrian routes, and I'm just wondering, do you know what they were meaning when they were saying trails? Is that a painted bike lane on the street, or is a trail more something through a park?
You know, that's a great question, and we talked about that a little bit with Ron when he was here. I think that in terms of our survey, it was used pretty generically. And as we're looking at the strategic plan, I think it's going to be really critical that we look at all types of trails. We look at sidewalk plans, and we make sure that we incorporate what the city is looking at in terms of a comprehensive sidewalk plan to look at our parks and figure out where the sidewalks are going in and how we can connect our neighborhoods to our parks and how we can connect our parks to other parks. So generally, it was more vague in terms of this survey. We didn't get into the detail of specifically what types of trails. But I can say that we did hear about biking, we heard about walking, and we heard about nature trails. So I think, and connectivity. So I think we're kind of running the whole spectrum of types of trails that residents are interested in.
And Ron was pretty confident that it meant longer trails, not... I don't know if Rosalind is kind of at that threshold of what residents are looking for.
I would agree. Ron did say that the smaller, like for example, we're putting a 1 mile loop trail around Pamela. That's great, and that's an improvement over what we have currently. But connectivity to a larger trail network is really the value that residents are putting on a trail system right now.
As I was reading through the results, one of the things that really got me thinking was, there is such a need for accommodating more walking, and it reminded me of how the sports dome is going to have the indoor walking trail, and it made me wonder, what is the potential for that as far as even more than just walking or in the future, and how does that play into our strategic plan?
That's a great question, and it's a great point. We are very excited about the walking track at the Sports Dome. We are going to try to have that track open as much as we can possibly get it open. We don't have the hours set. We will have the exact hours set by the beginning of December when we open the dome. But we're looking at having it open as early as 6 in the morning. So if someone wants to go over there before work and get a run in, it might be a little chilly in there because we turned down the temperature overnight, but it's going to be a lot warmer than it's going to be outside. The dome will be open for walking most of the time. It won't be open open for walking during lacrosse or some baseball activities, there's a net that goes all the way around the inside of the track, and it'll stop most balls, but those small hard balls will travel a little bit too far into the walking track area. So during those sports, the walking track will be closed, but we'll have those calendars advertised, and we'll try to offer some walking programs and really try to get that facility utilized. And it'll be free as well for walkers and
It feels like
joggers.
that's something that we really need to play up and advertise, because probably almost nobody has an idea in Edina that that's something that a month from now they could have.
I completely agree, and I've been talking to a lot of residents that are in the neighborhood that have been wandering over as construction is going on, and every single person I've mentioned the walking track, and they've been very excited about that.
All right, I think that's it for this agenda item, man. Thank you.
Great, and I want to say thank you to the board. It was one of the most difficult parts of this survey was getting the survey questions done, and I received a tremendous amount of input from all of the park board members. So thank you for helping me make that happen.
All right, as Ann makes her way over to her seat, the agenda item E here is the Park System Strategic Plan update. And how are you looking to accommodate that, Ann?
Yes, thank you very much. So I have in your packet a schedule, and then also tonight we put a more graphic version of the schedule on the dais for your review. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things on the schedule and see if you might have any questions, but mostly to give you a better feeling of the process that we're anticipating with the strategic plan, and to also help you get some dates on your calendar. So I have on November 13th the Strategic Planning Committee meeting as tentative. Well, it was tentative when I sent out this packet materials, but that meeting is actually happening on November 13th. And the purpose of that meeting is to really identify stakeholders and focus groups that we want to be talking to in December. And on November 17th, initiate the project website. I spoke with Terry from Confluence today, and that will be hosted on the city's website, and they will be providing information for us to keep that web page updated. Yes, absolutely. Susan, do you remember? Is it 3:30? 3:30 to 5 o'clock on the 13th. Okay, and at that meeting too, I hope to talk with the committee members to try to get some times on the calendar for the next committee meeting, so that we can get these planned a little bit further out. And then moving to phase 3. On the week of December 15th, it's going to be a big week for us because Jeff from Pros Consulting is going to be in town. And on the 15th, we hope to have a strategic planning committee meeting from 8 until 10 in the morning. Hopefully committee members will be able to make that one. And then after that, we will be doing staff interviews for my programming staff and my facility managers. And then on the 16th and 17th, we will be having stakeholder and focus group interviews. And then on the 17th and 18th, we will be doing recreation facility tours with Pros Consulting and 292, the architecture firm that is part of the team. And then on December 18th, we have a public workshop. So that'll be the first public workshop that we'll be hosting as part of this process. So that'll get us through the end of December. And that's really as far as I've gotten anyway, in terms of a very drilled down calendar. Does anyone? I do not have a time for the 4th yet. I'd like to discuss that at the meeting on the 13th. And was the other one the 15th? The 15th is from 8 to 10 a.m. And that's with Jeff from Pros Consulting and Terry from Confluence.
I got a conflict on that one.
Back to the website. Can we improve it? I know that a website is part of, I believe part of the contract. But there's nothing right now for the strategic plan. And so even just a few dates, like a paragraph. And then the needs assessment. So I just want to be very communicative, because if we want buy-in in this project, which we do, communication is very important. So on the Park and Recreation project page, the needs assessment YouTube video is just at the bottom, when there's no explanation of what that is or how it came about or anything. So if that could be in a page with the PDF of the study and then maybe a few dates, and if they create a different website for community input or whatever, that's great. But it's a little wonky right now.
Thank you.
A little wonky. All right. Yes. All right. Any other comments, questions on that particular item? All right. Then we can move on to correspondence and petitions. We all have some materials in our packets on the council updates and correspondence. And the Veterans Memorial Committee meeting and meetings. Does anyone have any comments or discussion points on that? Ann, do you have anything you would wish to say with those? No? Okay. With the council updates.
Oh, I have nothing for the council updates. No.
And the correspondence either, or the Veterans Memorial Committee meetings?
Nope, I have nothing for that.
Okay. What?
In fact, the Veterans Memorial is the construction is well underway. Yeah, it's actually going quite well at Utley. We have all of the footings in. We have a lot of the grading done. We even have some plantings done. Some of the granite is arrived. We have the electrical in. We have some sidewalks in. And the majority of what will be done in the spring of next year is a lot of the big granite work, the flags, and we hope to have our grand opening on Memorial Weekend of next year. So it's actually coming along really quite well.
All right. Then I think moving on to chair and board member comments. Well, I do have something to say about the Veterans Memorial Committee meeting minutes. There's a note in there about potential name change. What do you guys know anything additional besides what was in the meetings on that? They were proposing to maybe look at changing it to from Utley to Veterans Memorial Park.
I honestly have not even been involved in that conversation.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I can't comment on that right now.
All right. Any board member comments from anything tonight or anything else? Yes.
I just had a question, but it might be covered in the staff comments. But I was wondering if the work plan was approved when you brought it forward.
It has not been approved yet, but it'll be approved before the end of the year.
Okay. All right. Good question. Thank you. And believe it or not, the board has no further comments. So, staff comments?
I do have a few updates, if I might. Kaylin, could I have that picture? We have a dome. Ooh. Very excited to report that the dome went up this past weekend. It was supposed to go up on Monday, today actually, and because of the wintry weather that was anticipated, They worked really hard. They worked till like midnight on Saturday night and worked very long hours to get the dome inflated before that wet, heavy snow came in. So you are looking at the dome from the roof of the Hornet's Nest. So you're looking to the east, and as you can see, the rink is off to the right. And we have a new name for the outdoor refrigerated rink, and we're calling it the Backyard. So it's the Backyard at Braemar Field.
I like that. Where did that recommendation come from?
We did a public engagement, and we took resident feedback, and that was one of the recommendations from our residents.
Nice.
So yeah, we're very proud of that. It's coming along quite well. The next step for the backyard is refrigeration. The roof is almost done, and we're actually going to be turning the refrigeration on November 24th already. So we have, you can't see it. Well, actually, you can see it. If you look on the very right-hand side, you'll see a blue, looks like a truck, kind of. That is the temporary chiller. So we still have a temporary chiller on site that is providing the refrigeration system for the East Arena. So our plan is to turn on the refrigeration system is in place in the equipment room. We're going to turn on the refrigeration to the backyard, the outdoor rink, and then we're going to take out the temporary chiller. We've got to flush out the system because it's currently running on R22, and we have to flush out that rink and get it up and running on ammonia. So that'll happen over a 2-week period at the very beginning of December. So we're going to be having people skating out on the outdoor rink before the rest of the facility is open. So we're excited about that. The dome is up this week. They'll be working on insulating the dome and putting the lights up inside. So no one from the city has been inside the dome yet. They didn't want anybody in it as long as they were still working on the installation and with the heavy snow. So hopefully we'll get in it a little bit later this week. The dome is completely scheduled. We have a grand opening that's scheduled for the dome. I hope all of our park board members can attend. We'll be sending you a personal invitation. But the dome grand opening, Braemar Field and backyard grand opening will be on Friday, December 5th. And it'll be from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. We're going to start the ribbon cutting ceremonies at about 6:45. So we would love for the park board to be included and have a photo op, cutting some ribbon. And then we're going to have a community event. So we're getting participation from a lot of our athletic associations. We're going to be running just a lot of different types of events that people of all ages can participate on in the dome and on the rink, and we'll have open skating at the backyard from 8 until 9:30 that night. So it's really going to be a fun community event, and we're looking forward to it. So please mark your calendars. We'll be getting those invitations out very soon. And on a further construction note, a little bit about Pamela Park. We were really doing pretty well with construction until the snow event of today. The artificial turf field is green. We have the turf down, and they're not giving up yet. They're still going to continue to try to work on it. We'll see how much snow we get here. They've been sweeping it throughout the day. The process from now is that it's green. If you look at it, it is a green field with just a few lines, and they actually go back and they glue the colored lines in, and then they come in and they fill it with the sand and the rubber. And the whole process takes between 2 and 3 weeks. We're about a week into it. They're really working long days. They're working 7 days a week to try to get that done. So we'll probably have a determination tomorrow once we see how much more snow we get to see if they'll be able to finish the field this year. If they can't finish it this year, they're at a good place. They'll just put it to bed and come back and finish it next spring. At Pamela, we have the sand peat field started. We have the irrigation in, we have the drain tile in, and we have the sand in. We had hoped to get the peat mixture in, but now the snow came, so I heard at the very end of the day today that our site contractor is shutting down for the year. But that's fine. We're at a really good place to put that field to bed for the year too. We have a large grassy area on the east side of the park that has been graded and dormant seeded, and the irrigation has been put in. We have some trails installed throughout the park. We installed trails that are not going to be impacted by construction next year. The shelter building is being put off until next year. That'll start in the spring. The west parking lot is in and completed. It looks great. We will still have the entrance drive and the trails from the north side to do, and the parking lot on the north side and the parking lot on the south side. The environmental trail will get done next year. But we really have a really great start on the completion of that park. Speaking of websites, once we know exactly what's going to be done by the end of the year, we're going to be putting a map on the website to show residents what's been done and what is going to be done in 2015. An update on 40th and France, the property that is owned by the city of Minneapolis. I wanted to let you know about a meeting that will be taking place on Monday, November 17th at the Weber Park Shelter Building. The city's hosting a special community briefing and meeting about the opportunity to acquire the 40th and France property, and so that'll be an opportunity for residents to give their input and their interest in that site. That is from 6:30 until 9 p.m. on November 17th at the Weber Park Shelter Building. And then tonight we put a Vision Edina sheet on the dais just to remind you about another meeting on November 17th in the City Council chambers talking about Vision Edina, and this is a special presentation just for Edina's boards and commissions, so if you're able to attend, that would be greatly appreciated. And the one last thing, sure sign of winter, the Golf Dome opened on November 1st. So for all you golfers out there, please visit the Golf Dome. It's looking really great. We have a couple of new amenities this year. We've added some stations that are in the lower center part of the dome that will tell you your ball speed and your driving distance. And we also added some automated ball dispensing machines. So it makes the whole operation run smoother and look better. So we're excited about those additions. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's all I have.
Anyone? No? Ellen, no? All right. Well, seeing no further items on the agenda, I move to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed. All right, meeting adjourned.